Hello everyone, it's Laura Lebo here, inviting you to check out my podcast, A Few of My Favorite Jews. Every 2 weeks, I invite an artist from the city of Toronto to come on and tell me who their favorite Jew is. We talk about that Jew's life, their connection to Judaism, my guest's connection to Judaism, and we just laugh. So if you love Jews and you love listening to exactly two people talk about them for about an hour, you're going to love my podcast, A Few of My Favorite Jews.
Shalom Aleichem, listeners. Boker Tov if it's in the morning, and Laila Tov if it's in the evening. You're here with the Benchwarmers.
Alechem Shalom, Gabe. Welcome back, everybody, to the Benchwarmers, your bi-weekly look at the world of Jews and sports. Happy to be with you. Got some great feedback on our last podcast interview with Andrew Axler of Lost Tribe Esports. Gabe, I think we can count ourselves as part of the sort of, next generation of internet savvy Jews trying to create Jewish content online, right?
I think we're probably the first generation of internet savvy Jews.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the next generation of Jews who
happen to be internet savvy.
I think so. Getting our TikTok off the ground will definitely be like the ultimate, millennials trying to be hip with Gen Z, and we'll have to come up with some ideas for that.
Tell me you like Ian Kinsler without telling me that you like Ian Kinsler.
Yeah, exactly. Very extremely niche audience, but from what I understand, TikTok is like it's very, very good at finding the niche audience for the niche product. Do you know what I mean?
Like if our no computer can find our fans like TikTok can, presumably.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know, personally, not that I use it that much, but like I do get served a fair amount of Jewish content without having like told TikTok I'm Jewish. But
you ever taken a photo of yourself?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've told TikTok I'm Jewish without telling TikTok I'm Jewish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me you're Jewish, but exactly. It's here. It's finally here.
What's finally here?
It's Shavuos on Monday. Got any plans?
Oh, Shavuos. That's the cheese one, right? Yes. Yeah, that's cheese.
You're baking a cheesecake.
Oh, that sounds like a great opportunity, a great excuse to make a cheesecake. That it's so hard. I know like early in the pandemic, there was a lot of baking, and it was like
back when the pandemic was fun.
Back when the pandemic was fun. It was like, I'll finally watch The Sopranos. Not me personally, I've watched The Sopranos before, but lots of people were like, I'll finally watch The Sopranos and learn how to make sourdough. And now it's like, just like, oh no, I have this gross sourdough starter in the back of my fridge.
There's a lot of TikTok about pandemic baking and The Sopranos.
Right.
So if we can get in that content farm, that would be great.
The problem with baking, I find though, is that it's just like whatever you have is just ends up being a lot. It's like all mass cooking now for like if it's just just me and my wife and our 1-year-old who doesn't really contribute to the eating part as much.
Is she excited for the Shavuos cheesecake?
If we gave our daughter cheesecake, she would almost have it. She would love it. It's like the perfect texture for her. She loves the soft foods. Like anything like banana or softer is just perfect. You'll see when you get there.
Yeah, so far my baby only eats what my wife eats, but very indirectly.
Well, maybe I will make a cheesecake, but again, it's just like, but then I'd have this whole cheesecake, and like I'm fat enough already. I would say I can get fatter though, despite that, and it's just There's like room. eating 85% of a cheesecake, which is what would happen if I made a cheesecake. Is not going to help with the whole health thing. So,
well, I didn't think last year when I made my Shavuos cheesecake in 2020. Never once did I think I'll be making a Shavuos cheesecake still in quarantine in 2021. But here we are.
I think it doesn't. I feel like cheesecake doesn't freeze that well. Maybe it does. They do sell frozen cheesecakes. I feel like the ability to freeze something, like half a loaf of something, or like half your batch of cookies or something like that. That helps.
Yes.
Although I feel like Jews are particularly adept at freezing baked goods. Like that is something I've heard, especially like freezing bread is not something that's necessarily done much outside of
my entire life. Anytime my mother made cookies or I made cookies as a kid or anyone made us cookies, they always lived in the fridge.
In the fridge or the freezer?
Either, but usually like they would be hot, for an hour, and then immediately they'd go into the fridge. And you need them straight out of the fridge for the rest of the cookie's life.
See, I guess we were always a family, a fridge family, a freezer family. Sorry. And now I have a spare freezer in the basement. So it's like, there's no fridge room, but there's lots of freezer room. So fill it up with baked goods.
Jews are just so excited to have refrigeration that we overuse it for everything.
Maybe. Coming up later, I was just going to say we have a great interview with Nate Fish, the self-proclaimed king of Jewish baseball. And he talks.
Who's that really good Fish baseball guy?
Yeah,
the really famous one.
You mean Mike Trout?
No, Nate Fish. We got Nate Fish on the show.
We got the Jewish version of Mike Trout, one might say, as far as that goes. Nate talked to us a lot about the goings on at the Team Israel Baseball, which he's joined or will be joining very shortly.
He's been involved in the program for a long time. He's about to head out to training camp in Arizona shortly. Traditionally, this is when Jews tend to leave Arizona, the warmer months, but Nate has decided to go there. From what I understand, specifically for the purpose of complaining about the heat.
That's very funny. Have you ever been to Arizona in the summertime?
No, my dad has. Apparently, it's like Canada is in the winter, in that like you spend your whole time figuring out how to stay inside.
Right. And it's like going outside for short bursts, but not often. Certainly.
Yeah. Apparently Arizona, Phoenix didn't really explode as a city until the invention of air conditioning.
Right. Same with a lot of the Southwest, from what I understand. But the Israel baseball team's out there. They're doing training. I saw something earlier today that they're planning some exhibition games with an independent team or some league team in Susquehanna, like somewhere in Lehigh Valley or somewhere around there.
Yeah, they're going around the country. They're playing games in Pittsburgh, El Paso, sort of, I think, picking up players as they go along in order to join the team. And it's an interesting makeup we've got this year. They're sort of adding players bit by bit. Most recently added and most of interesting, to me, is from sort of the San Francisco area, DJ Sharabi, who not only is probably the only Mizrahi player on the team, but is absolutely probably is the only modern Orthodox guy on the team.
Oh, interesting.
He's sort of a daily tefillin guy.
Wow. Well, I'm sure they'll have to figure out, I don't know, getting kosher meals in Japan. I don't know how difficult that is. I mean, it's a lot of, I feel like Japan has everything, or like there's definitely a Chabad in Tokyo that will hook them up. That'd be an interesting thing to look into, how the, special meals for people with religious needs are dealt with at the Olympics. I have no idea about that.
Well, there's definitely a lot of halal players who keep halal or athletes who keep halal in the Summer Olympics. Your Iranian weightlifters and so on and so forth. But according to something that the Jewish News of Northern California wrote about hometown DJ Sharabi, is that he just eats vegetarian on the road.
That makes sense. I know a lot of kosher people do that. It's just sort of like better safe than sorry, or it's the best you can do in a lot of places. I've always easiest thing. But Japan, I think, is tough because I guess first of all, fish is parv, which would help him. But
that's true. He could probably eat a lot of fish in Japan, although there's probably shrimp in a lot of stuff, or fish oil and a lot of stuff that would have more shrimp that he couldn't necessarily eat.
That's true. That's tricky because I've always wanted to go to Japan, but as a vegetarian, I've always been concerned about like just there being fish and everything. So,
I'm curious to know how they'll do it. I mean, DJ, obviously, we'd love to chat with him and see, how he's figuring it out. I'm wondering, I'd like to ask him if tefillin counts as a foreign substance on his hand as he's pitching.
I don't think so. It doesn't leave a resin. It's not like pine tar.
I don't know. You could probably sneak some like sticky leather gum onto the tefillin, and as you take it off your hands, it stays there.
That would be pretty funny if you saw him wrapping tefillin like between innings, coming out, and he just had an emergency tefillin wrapping, and just explain to people as it's part of his religion, without explaining that he didn't actually need to do it right at this moment, but there he goes.
I wonder if he could use a little box on his head as like a intimidation tactic.
That's an interesting point. I don't know if anyone's actually pitched a full inning of baseball with a phylactery on their head, but it wouldn't shock me if some yeshiva team has made that happen. I think that's like chapter 3 of Chaim Putuk's The Chosen, if memory serves.
That's right. The shul baseball game in Portnoy's Complaint.
Right. We don't talk enough about Chaim Putuk's The Chosen. Really the text of religious Judaism and baseball. And
I think so. I remember in the movie The Hebrew Hammer, Adam Goldberg's character was dealing videotapes out of the back of his truck, bootlegs, and the kids could either choose Yentl or Chaim Potok's The Chosen. Those are the two tapes he had.
Those are the sort of two foundational movies of Jewish movies of the 70s and 80s, I guess. Not sure exactly when The Chosen one. Anyways,
let's move from sort of a Papa Can You Hear Me to the Papa of Jewish baseball. Nice. Nate Fish, our conversation with Nate happened the other day. It was really great. We spoke to him from his home in the Catskills, where he's fresh off his comedy tour. We wanted to talk to him about Israeli politics, but we didn't quite get to. But it was a fascinating chat about the Israeli Citizenship Project, sort of some history of teams he's played on and teams he's coached on, a little bit of personal history with the Cape Cod Baseball League, and sort of his hopes and dreams for summer 2021. And
also, we touched a little bit on the his recent coaching gig with the Savannah Bananas, a sort of alternative baseball team that's taking a new approach to baseball. So hope you stick around for the interview with Nate Fish. Some really interesting things to touch on and really interesting guy to hear from. All right, we're here with Nate Fish, the self-appointed, I think, king of Jewish baseball. Nate, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Is that a divine title, or is it like an ascendancy to the throne?
This was it was 2012, and a friend of mine called me the king of Jewish baseball. I'd been sort of in the mix with Israel baseball for a few years, and he just sort of threw it out there, and like Howard Stern style, self-appointed, and sort of grew into it. It was a prophecy.
That's great. So Nate, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you're doing these days, and what you have planning coming up in the next little while?
Sure. Well, I'm Nate Fish. Been involved with Israel baseball for over 15 years now, ever since they tried to launch a professional baseball league in Israel in 2007, the first and only professional baseball league in the Middle East.
Shortly lived.
Short-lived. Larry Barris from Boston tried to start a pro league there. But that set a sort of a whole chain of events into motion, and several of us that were involved in that league are still involved now, including myself and Eric Holtz, who are both on the coaching staff. Holtz actually managing the team, and I'm coaching third base for the 2021 Olympics. So there's a lot that's happened between those two events, but what could have been viewed as a failure in 2007 is sort of can be framed as a success, because this community of people kind of got in the mix for Israel baseball that are still working on it. So, long and weird path through baseball from every level, from coaching T-ball in New York City up to a couple World Baseball Classics and professional baseball and college baseball and everything in between. So I'll let you guys kind of guide the conversation here, but that's a short introduction.
Absolutely. You mentioned you're going to Team Israel, going to the Olympics. So you were part of the World Baseball Classic, sort of that remarkable story we've seen. We hear about it in 2017, as well as Israel's sort of miracle run in the qualifying tournament last year.
2 years ago now.
2 years ago now. Wow. I mean, in the Olympic qualifying cycle. So tell us a little bit what that is about, sort of being part of this miracle team.
Sure. I mean, so the story kind of starts, you got to back it up a little bit. So the first time we were invited to the World Baseball Classic was 2012.
Right.
And that was a little bit surprising, because you're talking about a country with a very small domestic baseball program with a low world ranking, but who gets invited to participate in sort of the best baseball tournament in the world, because Major League Baseball runs the tournament and they recognize our ability based on the rules of the tournament to put together a really good team. Basically, there's a lot of Jewish guys in pro baseball, big league guys, minor league guys, people scattered throughout, ownership and front offices all over the league. And so that's the first time that this group of people, many of whom are still involved, kind of come together as a team to try and qualify, and we lose. I mean, that team was stacked. It was Brad Ausmus was managing, Gabe Kapler was our bench coach, Sean Green was DHing, Jock was young, but playing outfield for us. Really, really on paper, the best team at the tournament. I think France, South Africa, and Spain were the other teams. We basically had to win 3 games against teams that were not as good as us, on paper at least, not to take anything away from them. And we would have made it to the World Baseball Classic. So we ended up losing to Spain in a really bizarre extra inning game in the finals of the qualifier. So it didn't start off as this like explosive like miracle. We basically felt like we had like failed ourselves and the coaching staff and the country and sort of the whole Jewish community that was like supporting the team that we knew we were sort of representing.
Right.
So it did not start off like this is a miracle. It started off like as a disaster a little bit.
And just to fill in the gaps, maybe for some of our listeners, at the time for qualification for the team, the only eligibility requirement, I believe, was you had to be eligible for citizenship of Israel, which basically meant anyone who was Jewish based on the law of return at the time. And I know that's changed a little bit for the Olympics, but that's how you were able to assemble that team that was, Sean Green, Brad Osmus, guys who were American Jews, not Israeli born or anything like that. But that was the first, I guess, attempt at making the World Baseball Classic. And then the team did qualify in 2017. That, I think, qualification itself was an amazing thing. Like that was a surprise to the people who were involved, I think, right?
Yeah. So it's called the Heritage Rule. That's what Major League Baseball calls. So
Right.
for the World Baseball Classic, you don't have to be a citizen of the country you play for. You only have to be eligible for citizenship of that country. So all these guys were eligible by the nature of having at least one Jewish grandparent. Were eligible to play for us, so we were able to assemble a good team. We luckily, you don't really know in these 4 years that passed between the tournaments, but we got invited to try and qualify again in 2016 in the fall for the 2017 World Baseball Classic, and we sort of got it right this time.
Right.
Many guys. Go ahead.
In Brooklyn, of all places.
In Brooklyn, a virtual home game for us at MCU Park. Against, weirdly enough, Pakistan, Brazil. We didn't actually play Pakistan. We played, but we did play Brazil and Great Britain, and won the qualifier this time. Many of the same guys on the team, guys that had like really extended their careers past whatever they had imagined, just to get this opportunity again to try and like get into the tournament. So that's when we kind of step in onto the world stage a little bit more. We get into the main tournament. We go to Korea the following spring during spring training. So March of 2017. Now it's Korea and the Netherlands, who people don't think of as a baseball country, but who had 5, big league shortstops on one team, which was crazy.
Mr. Jurickson Shofar himself.
Yes.
Well, because of the players from the Dutch Antilles, mostly from Curacao and Aruba. Who are
exactly.
big baseball places. Yeah,
exactly. And then we go on this crazy run. We win the first round in Korea. We win $1 million in prize money. We go to the second round in Japan. We beat Cuba in the first game. We lose in our second game to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And then played Japan sort of on their home field in the Tokyo Dome in front of like 55,000 people, which is really crazy. Winner of that game would go to the semifinals of the tournament in Dodger Stadium. We were tied going into the 5th, I think. Josh Zeid on the mound did a good job for the first few innings. We couldn't like hang on. They ended up winning the game. We were eliminated. They go, but we finished, I think when all the calculations are done, 5th in the world for that tournament. And now it's like, all right, like we definitely overachieved in that tournament,
Yeah.
I remember I watched all the games, but I feel like I don't have a great memory of them, because for us it was like 4 a.m, waking up to watch those games in Korea and Japan. But and that led to the miracle run. I just another one miracle run after another, I guess, of qualifying for the Olympics, winning the I can't remember exactly what it was called now. It was sort of like a tournament designed just for Olympic qualification, but getting that spot. I think we were all really excited last year, and then of course COVID hit and pushed everything back. But the band's back together, the team's being reassembled, and you mentioned off the air that you're going to go to the training site soon to start training with the team in preparation for the Olympics. Yeah,
we leave for Arizona on Sunday for our first of several training camps to try and get ready for July. Yeah.
And most of the players sorry, go ahead, Gabe.
Oh, I was going to say, we think of a every Jewish kid has dreamed about how would a team of all Jewish players do. Like if you were to take a team of every Jewish player in the majors, when I was a kid, it was Sean Green, and then, a little bit later, Danny Valencia and those guys, thinking like, oh, if they were together, the team would be so good. And now, to some degree, it's a little hamstrung by the realities of major league play. If a guy makes the majors, he may not be part of the team. So how do you guys deal with that when you're planning for the summer?
Yeah, we just have these extended rosters. So there's some guys on the bubble. So the rule is, all right, so to give you guys a little picture of what international baseball is like, Major League Baseball runs the World Baseball Classic. The competing organization called the World Baseball and Softball Confederation runs the Olympics.
Right.
And so Major League Baseball players and anyone that's on the 40-man roster is not allowed to compete in the Olympics. I think they were trying to get to a deal where maybe they were going to let them, but I don't think there's enough time or whatever.
Mm.
So 40-man roster guys cannot play in the Olympics. So as you're going through selecting, and we got a couple guys on the bubble, Ryan Lavarnway, who's going to catch for us, is with the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's on the taxi squad right now.
Right.
Who knows? Chance Varno's in the big leagues, and good for him, bad for us kind of thing.
Right. That's sort of the flip side. I mean, it'd be great to get someone like, Jock Peterson or Alex Bregman, but, they have pretty steady major league jobs that they tend to.
Yeah. And even in the World Baseball Classic, I mean, asking a guy to leave spring training to go to Korea and totally take them out of their routine, turn their clocks upside down, be in a really competitive situation when they're not used to it in early March. It's like, it takes some convincing when you're constructing the rosters. Especially in this case, because like you guys were talking about leading up to the qualifying rounds throughout the summer of 2019, general management, now the dudes have to actually get passports. Right. It's getting guys to Israel, convincing people not only to come play for your team, but to make Aliyah, and being like, I promise you're not going to have to serve in the army, it's crazy.
So now everybody who's on the Olympic team or potentially on the Olympic team has to be an Israeli citizen.
Yes.
And has to, have gone through the whole process as you mentioned.
Yeah. Spend time in Israel, get citizenship. It's no joke. It's a huge commitment.
So it is sort of like a two-way street. I mean, in one way, it's the baseball is using Israel as a way to grow the game internationally and create more of an international fan base and stuff like that. But another way, Israel has sort of been able to use baseball to, get on the world stage in this different way and get a few more citizens. I don't know if that's the end goal, but it's interesting to see it work both ways.
For sure. I mean, to see, a baseball pretty low profile in Israel, but within the American Jewish community, it's what you could probably call the most Jewish sport.
Yeah.
We were talking sort of offline before, maybe hockey has baseball, but historically baseball is kind of Jewish. There's always about a dozen big league guys and fans, and there's some identification.
Big in New York and LA is, I think, a big part of that is, you sort of identify a lot of major teams with famous Jewish players or fans, Sandy Koufax being a great example for the start of the Los Angeles Dodgers. LA is a fairly Jewish city, and the Dodgers, I think, are pretty big in Jewish culture there, as an example.
For sure. And so Israel baseball, despite having not a huge presence culturally in Israel, has been able to tap into the American Jewish community, and it works as this sort of bridge. Like you guys were saying, Israel is glad, obviously, to have a team in the Olympics for the first time in 40 years, even though many of them are American in a sense, even though we all have passports as well.
And we should say this is the first time baseball is returning to the Olympics. I can't remember exactly when it was last held, but it must have been 2004, 2008. It's been a while that baseball was out of the Olympics, and it's a small tournament. I mean, it's only 6 teams, right? So there's not a bad chance for Israel to make a real run at it and potentially medal. I think that would be, the real cherry on top of this, as you say, 15-year almost odyssey now of developing Israel baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a well, not to interrupt, but I think it's a very big, Israel's the final 6. Like you said, they came in 5th. They're in the top 5 again.
Yeah, it's true. Nate, we wanted to talk to you about something else you've been doing, which is coaching with I don't know if minor league is the right term or collegiate league team called the Savannah Bananas. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So they historically have been a collegiate team. They play in the CPL, the Coastal Plains League. So they have a summer league team that a friend of mine named Tyler Gillum manages.
Mhm.
And they have this very highly entertaining brand. The music is playing throughout games. There's performances. It's kind of like the minor league baseball model, just like ratcheted up a lot.
Right.
Like the stuff that's going on between innings is a little crazier.
They have
The
2
music is
Star
a
Wars
little
days.
louder. Yeah. And so they sell out. They have like 30 home games a year, and they sell out every single home game.
Wow.
And they've built up this, like, I think over 5 or 6 years with the college team, they've built up this crazy fan base. People all over the world are buying Savannah Bananas merch, and Jesse Cole, the owner, is sort of this crazy entrepreneur, wears a yellow tuxedo every day, just like gas pedal all Savannah Bananas all day, every day. And they've really grown into like a pretty big company. So Jesse's big next crazy idea was, since the college team is such a success, let's launch a pro team.
Right.
And let's take it even further. Let's be like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. Let's change rules. We're not even playing in a league anymore. We can do whatever we want. Major League Baseball is sort of playing with pitch clocks and a few rules to try and speed the game up. But this is like way on steroids. Like, no one's supervising us. We can do whatever we want. Let's make games 2 hours. If fans catch foul balls, you're out. So there's these 9 fundamental rule changes. You can steal first base. It's real crazy. And the entertainment is ratcheted up even more and more and more and more. There's a band playing. It's just, it's like a circus.
Yeah, I mean, Major League Baseball's, playing with the rules a little bit, and like just like such a around the edges way. Like, what if we make first base just, a few inches wider, or what if we move the pitcher's mound back 6 inches? And banana ball, as I believe it's been called, is sort of like, let's throw out the whole thing and redesign baseball. I would say it's still baseball in the sense that it's like, four bases, and it's a diamond, and there's fielders where there's supposed to be fielders, and a pitcher throws the ball. But beyond that, it's sort of like they change the rules of scoring and all that. I see that the like, you win each inning is sort of like win or lose, and if the home team or whoever's batting in the home half of the inning like scores more runs than the away team did, the inning's over. Let's move on. And I know there's a time limit, and you can steal first, and all these other crazy things that it sort of seems like it's just fun. It's just fun to see the experiment of it, that there's all these different changes that lead to different outcomes. Like, as much as, we all love baseball, I'm not suggesting that, there's anything wrong with baseball per se, but you sort of have an understanding of how baseball plays out most of the time. If there's a certain situation, a certain man's on deck or a certain man's on base, it's like, what's going to be called for, the sort of motions here, and this sort of just turns it on its head. So was it you'd been there this spring? That's right, to coach with the team?
Yeah. So Jesse called me, asked me if I wanted to manage the team. Went down there in February for tryouts. Mixed bag of guys were there, guys with high level, some pro experience, guys that were just randomly wanted to come to try and wear stilts and try out for this circus baseball team. We picked 2 teams, the same way the Globetrotters also have their opponents, the Washington Senators,
Generals, I think. Yeah.
Washington Generals. We also had the Party Animals. So we picked 2 teams, kind of like the villain and the hero. Okay. And we could do like a little barnstorming thing that's going to continue to go and continue to expand, I think, to more and more cities next summer. But yeah, it was, I'm like, all right, I'm the head guy. You're sort of used to being like a baseball coach. You're like, how are we going to prep? Let's do this. Let me design the practice this way. And at some point I was like, no one cares. Like, they're here for the circus, Right. And so internally, I want to give the guys good information and good workouts because there's value for the players there. But really, like, it was so not about winning and losing. The fans, one of the craziest things about it is the fans are like lined up around the stadium at 5:30, an hour and a half before game time when the gates open. And we go out there, the gates open, the fans come in, the band is playing, and they're just like, they're totally there for the show. No one leaves. I mean, it works. It really, 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 really works. It's sort of a crazy idea, but they've built up a big enough fan base that, they sell out every game, and it's just nuts.
Yeah, one thing I found amazing reading an interview with Jesse was he was talking about how basically nobody leaves during the game, which I've always thought is sort of I guess a challenge baseball has, and again, I've left games early. It's not that I haven't, especially when I've had season tickets and a team that wasn't playing 500 baseball. There's games where you want to get out of there and stop.
I think my father has been to over 1,000 baseball games in his life and never seen the ninth inning.
Right. But that is sort of a unique problem about baseball, that there's not necessarily a reason to stick around. But it sounds like between all the entertainment and the rule changes, there's a real fan environment that just makes it fun throughout the game, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, the games are 2 hours too, so
Right.
know when it's going to end. In a baseball game, you're like, I have no idea. This could go on for a while. But games are 2 hours. Goes into this thing called the tiebreaker that maybe takes 20 minutes, and then you're out of there. So you have this you kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so people stick around for the whole thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with baseball either. I actually kind of think that Major League Baseball shouldn't be tinkering too much. But something like that, what Jesse's doing is cool, because you're not tinkering. You're really moving the line a lot. And it's sort of this testing ground for stuff, that may or may not impact the mainstream of baseball. I really don't know, but they make a lot of noise in the media. That's for sure.
I wonder when the first banana will make the majors. I mean, you've got stories of guys playing at the Harlem Globetrotters who, after tryout after tryout and struggle for a while, end up breaking through. I think it's only a matter of time before somebody from one of those, you hear about independent ball guys coming on. Why not the Bananas? And that's going to be a really unique experience, I think, or a unique story. And I think it's almost kind of a Jewish one, where you get in your own way instead of from the traditional way, which is a very Jewish attitude towards rules.
Yeah. I mean,
it'd be cool to see if somebody gets spotted hustling to first, trying to steal first base, and that's where they get scouted out of.
and the Branch Rickey of the Savannah Bananas goes, I'm hiring that guy.
Yeah. I mean, we had a couple of guys that could really run, and there's been a lot of shake up in minor league and independent pro baseball recently, and there's guys everywhere, man. Guys that are playing indie ball or in the big leagues in September and get back down to getting released and looking for jobs, and it's a really crazy scene. So there's no reason that something like that couldn't happen.
And speaking of sort of non Major League Baseball, and I'm curious to know. If I want to talk about your time in the Cape Cod League, you're wearing a Cape Cod League shirt now. I am the child of New Yorkers, and spent almost every summer of my life going to Cape Cod here and then. I've got great memories of Cape Cod baseball, and I feel that that's the most traditional baseball you can imagine. No scoreboard, no screens. The games are free, brick walls in the outfield. And it's a totally different experience. So I'm curious to know, has there been any sort of Judaism that's come into play with that in your life?
I mean, Scott Pickler, our head coach that I was with for 2 years, Pick is Jewish, and his kid is Jewish, and his kid is a baseball coach, and his kid is a big league baseball coach with the Cincinnati
Reds. Awesome. And that was in Yarmouth?
Yeah. So, Scott Pickler has been the head guy at Yarmouth for 23 years. He's won 6 championships. He's this legend. He was inducted into the American Baseball Coaches Association Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. Just a real legend, college Cape Cod guy. And his son, who played, I think, in AAA, is a big league coach with the Reds, Jeff Pickler.
I think that's I think nowadays there's the most coaches in the majors that are Jews than there's ever been. Between Osmus and Melvin, and Pickler is not the head coach, but he's close. If you're, it's an interesting legacy that we now have sort of in the management side. It's great. I want to share one memory. I think it was 2008. I remember going to Yarmouth-Dennis versus Orleans playoff game. I don't know if you would have been there at that time, but I've looked it up. I don't think we saw Chris Sale, but he was on the team that year.
I mean, if you look at YD's, there's so many guys, so many big league dudes on the field at any Cape League game. It's crazy.
It's amazing.
Buster Posey was catching, Sales on the mound, Turner, I mean, there's dudes that are sitting on the bench that are going to go to the big leagues that aren't even in the lineup. You know what I mean? It's nuts. There's so much talent in that league.
I was at a game, I think it was in 2019, where, it was after we had started this podcast, and I'm scanning both the lists for any Jewish sounding names on the little, they hand you a printed lineup card on like printer paper. It's the most amazing thing. And I'm like, oh, Mike Rotherman, that guy, he's one of us.
There you go. Like my parents, man, watching the credits of a movie, just scanning the screen for a Jewish name.
Exactly.
That's a lot of what we do recently. Watching the NFL draft was just like, this guy's first name is Israel, and I'm going to look him up, and absolutely he's Nigerian. But still, it's fun to know.
Yeah.
One day we'll get a Jew named Israel in the NFL. That would be something.
My middle name is Israel.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
I'm not in the NFL though.
But you are a coach. When you were working in the Cape Cod League, was your name Nate Yarmouth-Dennis Fish? That's it's great to talk to you about this, and we really appreciate the time. We're sort of running low on time here for the show, but I want to ask you a couple of things. Is there any Jewish players you think in baseball that our audience should watch out for, both on the Olympic team and who they might see in the majors this year?
I mean, there's been this huge sort of spider web of connections now from being with Team Israel for so long, of guys that have made it to the big leagues for a little bit or have had long careers now, or maybe you're kind of rooting for. And, you turn a game on and you see someone here and someone there. Tyler Krieger, who was with us in 2017, probably just broke minor league camp, probably AAA with the Indians. He may be up, and someone that we could look for.
Dean Kramer's off to a big start.
Dean, I have a funny Dean Kramer story real quick. I know we're running low. So I met Dean when he was 14 years old. Wow. And he was small, and he came to one of our practices in Israel. And the guy who was coaching the team, Pat Doyle, goes, "Hey, this is Dean. He lives in California. Not going to be a pro guy or anything. Loves baseball. Little outfielder. Play JV this year. That's it." We're kind of like, "All right, scram, kid. We got to get back to practice." I mean, we talked to him for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then I would see him over the years periodically. I ended up coaching him in 2013 for the Maccabiah Games. I ended up being his teammate in the European Championships when he was playing in college. And I've just been watching him just grow and get better and better and better and better. And now he's in the big leagues with the Orioles. And so, I mean, he's one of my favorite guys. He's such a good kid.
That's great. Well,
and a lot of Jews in Baltimore too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Nate, we're going to have to end it there just because we are running out of time here, but good luck with everything at training camp. Good luck with everything this summer. Obviously we're rooting hard for Team Israel at the Tokyo Olympics. And, we're really proud of you guys, and we know you're going to be great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks again to Nate Fish for joining us. Gabe, off the air, we were talking a little bit about this Kentucky Derby scandal. Do you think is horse racing a Jewish sport or not a Jewish sport, would you say?
Do we know what year Jews were allowed into the Kentucky Derby?
Oh, good question.
We need to
look into that. I bet it is. There was a Jewish jockey.
The year probably starts with a 2.
I don't think it starts with a 2. But I think it starts with 1, 9, and then a number higher than 5, I'm going to say. Like, it wasn't 1912, but was it 19? If you found out it was like 1974, you'd be like, wow, well, kind of, that's how it is sometimes.
I bet you that, I don't know much about the history of modern North American Jewish wealth, but I bet from what I do know that while, horse racing, like the operation and ownership of horse racing was probably not particularly Jewish, even though the like rigging and fixing and manipulation of horse racing probably was Jewish for a while. Right. Like, I bet, your Arnold Rothsteins and your Bugsy Siegels probably had a finger or two inside a horse.
Yeah, I think so. I would say horse racing, I think of as Jewish, just because like most horse racing has probably been at like, like the Belmont or like lower class, like East Coast horse racing venues, Saratoga. And like has been fixed by Jews at various points. I know Ahmed Zayat, who was the guy who owned American Pharoah, which won the Triple Crown a couple years ago. He is like a enigmatic figure who I think both identifies as Jewish and Muslim. I'm not sure exactly what his background is,
I mean, the debate over whether the pharaoh was Jewish or Muslim has been going on for a long time. So
sure,
the ownership of such it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but he went to Yeshiva University, but also was the scion of Arab Egyptian intellectuals, and he sort of identifies. But anyways, he's the sort of
so he would be an American pharaoh. Was that sort of referring to himself?
I don't know if it was. I think all these horse names are you look at the lineage and it's well, his dad was Croatian
his sire
pharaoh.
Was this
exactly,
his sire was by this and but I would love to one day see a Kentucky Derby like a Kentucky Derby winner or horse that has a really Yiddish name.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, the Kentucky Derby this year was won by Stickel.
Yeah.
And, Stickel beat out, I don't know, Schmutz, very quickly.
Okay, so there's our pronouncement on the issue. Horse racing, officially, we're going to call it a Jewish sport. Not the higher brow elements of it necessarily, but we're going to call it a Jewish sport. We'll have to do some judgment on other types of racing at another time. Until then, and when we investigate the entree of Jews to the Kentucky Derby, you can catch up with our podcasts. You can find them all at thecjn.ca, the new beautiful revamped website for the Canadian Jewish News, where you can find our podcasts and our archives and all of our sister and brother podcasts.
Thanks again for all your comments and all your messages. We're excited to continue following Team Israel as they get closer and closer to the Tokyo Olympics.
Yeah, see you next time. Have a cheesy Shavuot, everybody.